Welcome to Conversations with LSN Tap, where we meet interesting people and hear how they are increasing access to justice through technology. Here's your host, Shelley Reed.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for stopping in today to hear our latest version of the Conversations with LSN Tap podcast. Today we have Tucker Cottingham with us. He is a success story. He's the general manager of Clio Draft. And it's going to be really interesting to hear his story and how he bootstrapped his way up to being in Clio. And so let's introduce Tucker. Tucker, would you like to share something about yourself with our audience?
Sure. Hi, Shelley. Thank you for having me on today. Yeah, as you mentioned, it's been an exciting journey. I'm a lawyer and, worked in litigation and then helped build out a transactional practice for several years. And, kind of just had the problem myself in our practice. And I sort of joked that it was the thing that I liked the least about my job was doing the paperwork. So then I just, decided to dedicate the rest of my career to that specific thing that I didn't really like doing. But it's been exciting. And, we started out as an AI legal drafting tool initially. And, at the time it was not Gen AI and ChatGPT were not things that people were talking about. So we had a much different, sort of trajectory and fundraising path, trying to explain the value and connect with people on the potential impact of AI with document automation and legal services. And over the course of several years, we kind of found some good footing and some really great customers to work with and a lot of support in the community. And we grew it and now we're at Clio. It's been 2.5 years now that we've been with Clio.
So awesome. So if I understand correctly, you started out in disability rights, in working in that field. Is that correct?
Yeah, so kind of my path to law school, actually, before I went to law school, I worked, with disabled folks, and I went to college in Ohio. And so while I was in college, I would work from like 7 at night to 7 in the morning, staying in somebody's house, basically. And that was an interesting experience because I'll sort of say the backstory, but ultimately I ended up advocating for this guy at sort of some county level proceedings to make sure that he had the rights that he was entitled to. And that kind of, opened my eyes to the power of sort of unlocking some of these benefits and privileges that people are entitled to under the law, but may not be able to actually navigate. And that was kind of an extreme example because, he was developmentally disabled. So his inability to access the system was different than what a lot of other people experienced, but it was like very front and center in my life at that time. And then went on to work at a place called the Bridge School, where Neil Young had started a school with using technology to help kids with cerebral palsy design language systems. And so worked there. And then that's what led me to law school. So that's kind of how I got there. And that school was really interesting just because initially, I'm from Kentucky and coming from Ohio, where I had like a broken broomstick for the van lift that I was using. And then I came into this world of retina scanners and fancy equipment. And I thought that the kids that went there must be from wealthy families. And what I learned was that they just had really good lawyers. And that wasn't at all the case. And so, it just kind of helped motivate me to think about ways to sort of systemically navigate for people who are the more vulnerable people or maybe don't have access. So yeah, it's big part of my own motivation and backstory with that experience.
It's really interesting. So I was a late in life law school student. That's how I like to phrase it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, I'm finding that there's more of us who have, careers before law school, and how it shapes what we do after is really interesting to me. So
Yeah.
we know that you're the founder of Lawyaw. Was anyone else involved in bringing that product to market?
Oh yeah, so I had a really awesome co-founder named Bahed Kazvinian, who was a PhD in natural language processing. He worked at Google Search, working on language understanding algorithms, and so he was my co-founder. So we started Lawyaw together, and then another one of our friends, Omid, was the designer, and he was part of the early team. And so really the three of us, initially kind of came up with Lawyaw. We went from like whiteboard sketches in my backyard to getting some paying customers and growing. I think we've generated about 7 million documents in the last couple of years with Clio now. So so really, I brought kind of the problem understanding and kind of domain experience. And I've always been very kind of interested in building businesses and organizations, and I had businesses when I was a kid growing up. And, I used to sell motor scooters when I was in grade school. I had like a regional motor scooter, company. And so I've always been kind of oriented to that. And so I was able to kind of, help frame the problem and the, but on the technical side, Bowhead's a brilliant engineer and, was a huge part of our success. Absolutely.
That's awesome. So I know that the legal tech world is really, a tough world to get started in. What were some of the challenges that you faced along the way?
Yeah, well, I think the initial challenge that we faced was fundraising. It was very unexpected to me because I practiced as a lawyer and I hated doing repetitive, rote, mind-numbing things. And when we went to raise money, the initial objection that we got is lawyers get paid by the hour. They'd be happy to scrub a, bathroom with a toothbrush for, $200 an hour, and they're never going to pay for any efficiency. And it kind of just caught me off guard because I was sort of shocked at what a low kind of regard people seem to have for us. And so, I thought we were going to kind of start the conversation like on step 7 about, the specific technology and solution. And I was like, oh, we're starting at like step 1, like, do lawyers want efficiency? And it was also kind of interesting because at the time, we ended up going through this program called Y Combinator, which is like a startup accelerator. And in our batch, there was a guy who was starting another company called Atrium, which was a sort of, technology enabled law firm. And that guy was Justin Kahn, who, had a $1 billion successful company in the past and is really well known. And part of his pitch for his company was essentially lawyers are structurally disincentivized to be efficient and they won't buy technology. Therefore, we need to create the law firm ourselves. So that was also kind of tricky just in terms of timing because he was such a sort of visible, successful person. And, I'm from Kentucky and don't have that kind of didn't have that kind of track record in Silicon Valley. And so so I was just really kind of shocked at how much education was needed about sort of the profession and how lawyers spend their time, and about the access gap that exists, I think is not super well known outside of sort of legal aid communities. And so that was probably the initial thing that we ran into. And luckily we found some really great investors and supporters, and obviously Y Combinator saw the value of what we were doing, and that helped us a lot. And then once we started kind of building, we had some very cool, powerful technology pretty quickly. And what we realized was that a couple of interesting things, I guess, but one of them was that the usability of it was so important. People didn't really care what was going on under the hood as much as they just wanted it to work. And it wasn't something that people were going to become like super excited about. It was like solving a frustrating, annoying pain point in their daily lives that they wanted to essentially not be there. So like the more invisible it is, the more just it works with their other stuff. They don't have to think about it. Like that was the ideal solution for our customers. And so we had to kind of orient to our lane where we weren't ever going to be the most exciting thing in the world that these lawyers get to do. Like we almost want it to be invisible. Like we almost want it to be so seamless and smooth that easy to use that so there was a really big disconnect between the complexity of what was going on under the hood, and I think there still is, and sort of how simple and straightforward we need to make it. So a concrete example of that is early versions of Lawyaw's website, had AI powered legal drafting, and we would just get all these calls and talk to people about it. But it wasn't really attracting people necessarily, at the time. It was more, what does this mean? We're curious about this. Like there was no inherent value to people that it was using AI or not, or, it was more like, this is what I do today, and what will I be doing tomorrow with your software? How will it be different? And we want the margins to be this way, and we like our law firm's name to have this formatting, and we like to do this horizontally, and all these very nitty, like specific kind of details. So we kind of just oriented that to that, which was, kind of again just trying to really work collaboratively with our customers. And what we learned is that they just wanted something that was super simple, that worked, that was easy to use, and it didn't need to be packaged as something really complicated or sophisticated or even exciting. It just needed to work and solve the problem. And what we know is that the document space is super complicated. People have been working on document automation for 30 years. To really solve it is a sophisticated, complicated, pretty exciting thing with a lot of innovation. But that's not our audience wasn't computer scientists. It was lawyers who didn't want to fill out the same information across 20 forms. So yeah, so I thought that was really interesting. And we had a really talented designer, Omid, who I mentioned, from the very beginning. Kind of once we knew that the design and the usability was going to be really critical. And so we kind of unconventionally invested in that early on in the product, which I think was a good decision looking back. Yeah, so I'd say those are kind of the big learnings. Yeah, some of them.
That's really interesting, and that's so true about the legal field. They don't care how it works, they just want it to work.
Yeah.
So we've hinted at it in your answers, but can you tell us exactly what Lawyaw, which has become Clio Draft, what is the product? What does it do?
Yeah, that would be a good place to start. So Clio Draft and previously Lawyaw is a document automation solution and a document workflow solution. And what it does is it helps people gather the information that they need, whether that's from information that already exists in your billing system or from clients or whoever, and then take that information and use it to generate sets of documents. So family law is a really popular area for us, and wills and estates and civil litigation and immigration, and a lot of filings that lawyers do, and a lot of the documents that they end up having to create for clients are packets of documents. So you might need to file, a declaration, and you might have 3 or 4 different documents, and one might be a PDF from the court, and one might be Microsoft Word. So you kind of like naturally get these packages or sets of documents that need to be completed. And there's a lot of the same information that needs to go across those: client names, addresses. A lot of the work from client to client is similar, but has really critical, unique distinctions. So how do we kind of, make it so that it's still tailored to your client, but also gives you the efficiency of not reinventing the wheel every time? And so the idea is you can gather your information, you can kind of set up your packages the way you want. So if you're using court forms, you can pre-check boxes, you can save canned information or save the formatting for the way you like your law firm's name to be in the documents. You can add that to your own custom Microsoft Word templates. So you're using the documents that you already use in your firm, language you already like, the logos and headers you like, and everything like that. You can combine them, and then you can generate that whole set. And you can have conditional logic, so you can change subject verb agreements or pronouns, or people are doing things in Spanish. The pronouns become really important, and they need to change, and so you can kind of take a lot of that predictable kind of adjustments that you would manually be making, and you can automate that. And so it's also got an e-sign functionality, so you can take that generated document and easily review what changed. So you don't have to read the entire thing to understand if there's an error. You should have it set up so you can kind of know what to look for. So that saves a lot of time. and they can send them out for signature. And what's really kind of been interesting is in one of the ways that we kind of got to that solution was we talked to a lot of attorneys who felt like they couldn't delegate their work. There's a certain ceiling where even if it's something that the attorney could do in their sleep, they've been doing it for 10 years, they know exactly every detail of it. For some reason, when they try to like delegate to a paralegal or to an assistant or a junior attorney, the phrase that we hear a lot is, it's just faster if I do it. And they felt like trapped in that world, you know? And so what our tool also kind of unlocks is the ability to set up these kind of guardrails and frameworks so you can delegate it to somebody else. And you can be, you know, you can have oversight, you know exactly what they changed. And it really kind of unlocks a lot of additional capacity and capabilities within the organization. Particularly, one of the really cool things that we kind of learned, it's been fun because people use our product in ways that we didn't necessarily expect. And legal aid clinics is a great example. We have a ton of legal aid organizations that use it with volunteers, you know, who come in and they can sort of bring them in, they can set them up with the packages, they can help them, you know, generate the documents. They can manage multiple people with, you know, sort of pre-made paths for different types of legal documents in different practice areas. And it kind of gives you that quality control and oversight, and you can do it remotely. So during the pandemic, that was really helpful. And so, yeah, it's just been really, really exciting to kind of see how folks use it. But essentially, it's a cloud-based document automation tool that can work end to end from gathering the information to signature. Yeah.
So in this last cycle, LSC chose not to fund document automation projects. So can you speak to that? Can you, do you have any thoughts on maybe the frustrations or the, I don't know, maybe what is wrong with document automation today in the greater realm, or at least in the legal aid area? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I'm on the Emerging Leaders Council for LSC, and so my first term, so I'm still kind of getting my bearings there, and I know you know, we've gotten some, I know that the funding has been challenging and so forth, but I've been really impressed with everybody at LLC that I've worked with so far. And so I don't know a ton about that specific decision. I do know that in general, you know, kind of that initial dynamic that I mentioned where document automation is supposed to make things more simple and easy. And people have been trying to do that for a long time. You know, I mean, people, you know, back to the days of hot docs and paying consultants to write, you know, actual script into your documents and learn like kind of that language. And it used to be like, you know, you basically had to know a computer programming language. And I think that generally there's just been a disconnect between the actual complexity of the space and the ability to provide a scalable solution. You know, people don't want just cookie cutter kind of language. They want to be able to bring their experience to the table and leverage that in their client interactions and in their documents. So I think it's a much more complicated space than most people appreciate. Technically, it creates a lot of complexity with reusing data and integrating with other pieces. And also just the kind of the workflow, the inherent workflow, you know, when as a lawyer, when somebody says, okay, you know, you've been hired to, you know, generate, you know, to file a divorce or for some, help somebody get divorced or to create a will, or, you know, in our minds as lawyers, you know, that's one thing. I need to, you know, make a divorce petition for this person. But the actual steps to do that, you know, there's many different related steps. You need to gather the information, you need to evaluate it, you need to find what language you use, you need to look at the jurisdiction and the filing requirements, right? All these different things. To us, they kind of roll up into one job. That's all part of one job. But from a purely kind of like technical solution, there's many different steps that need to come together to be able to do that job well in a way that really is meaningful. And so I think it's a challenging space basically, but I have no idea, to be totally honest, I have no idea if that decision has anything to do with the quality of solutions that are available, or if it's more about budgeting and focus and maybe other programs that can address that in different ways. So that's kind of my hunch, but it is challenging, and people want this very simple solution, and so feels like it should be really simple. But it takes a lot of very smart people working all the time on it to keep it going.
Agreed. So what if you could reach out and tell people what are the myths and misconceptions about document automation that you encounter that you just want to dispel?
Yeah. Well, I would maybe phrase it differently. The way that I think about document automation is in the context of really of legal aid. We can think about it in this way, where the majority of people that need legal help can't afford it. In order to have a well-functioning democracy, we need a well-functioning legal system that is accessible and that people can actually benefit from the protections and privileges that they're entitled to under law. And so if that fundamental thing is not working, then like the health of the very foundational system is at risk, right? If you have rules and laws and people can't take advantage of them, then it's not working. And we're in a situation now where the majority of people who need legal help simply don't get it. In order to do that, I think we really need to be thinking about how do we meet people where they are when they need the help most. You look at rural populations that have really low amount of lawyers that live there that can easily help people. When we did legal aid clinics, we would have people that took time off of work so that they could take a bus for an hour and a half across town to get to this physical building. They've got kids in tow, they've got all kinds of stuff going on in their lives. It is not convenient for a lot of people. Even for people who can pay for lawyers, driving downtown and paying $40 to park in a parking garage and taking 3 hours of your day for a 30-minute meeting is not convenient. And so I think we really need to start there and say, how do we really make it so that people, when they need help, are able to quickly access that help. And I think that technology is the clear mechanism, the clear vehicle for how we can deliver that experience where we can meet people where they are when they need help. And so reaching through people's kind of devices, whether it's their phone or their computer or something else, but really kind of thinking about the digital transformation of legal services being a critical component to ensuring that people can access legal help, I think is kind of like the first principle that I start with, is that there is no future world that I can imagine where legal services don't become increasingly digitized. And we've seen this in a lot of other industries. And so if that's the inevitable future state of the law, is that we're going to continuously digitize and continuously make legal services more convenient and accessible, then how we create documents becomes a really big part of providing that service. Obviously documentation is everything in the legal system. I say sometimes like documentation is the lifeblood of the legal system, like system of record, right? That is what we're building it on. And so we have to account for how do we digitize documents and put them into digital workflows if we're going to digitize legal services. And so I think that really the starting place for document automation is there. It's an inevitable, necessary thing that we need to solve. And it's a really expensive, complicated problem to solve, but we need to solve it as an industry, as a society. And so I think that's part of it. And I think the way to think about it practically is, how do you, in an organization, start with the low-hanging fruit? How do you just get something that is starting to save you time, that is starting to work well, and then build onto it? And how do you, a lot of the challenges become around change management, become around implementation. I would say right now we're at a place where the technology and the capabilities are ahead of the ability for people to like easily change how they do things. I think we'll probably run into, you know, additional roadblocks as the other systems kind of catch up. But yeah, I would, so that's I think the most critical piece is that like this is something that is necessary to solve as a puzzle piece in providing, in closing this gap. And legal aid organizations can be a huge driver by participating, by working with technology companies, by giving feedback, by trying things out. And thinking about it more as a work in progress, I think, is a really important piece of the puzzle. Because if you kind of go in with that mentality, you're going to be able to realize a lot of gains, but you're not going to sort of set your expectations as overnight, you know, suddenly, like what people oftentimes think, to maybe address your question more directly, is people think that we're trying to tell them that, oh, we can now do your legal work. You can now do your legal work like you would order a pizza, right? You push a button and everything's done. And it's like, that's not what we're trying to sell. We're trying to sell, you know, how do you digitally transform your services to keep up with the needs of the world, you know, of your clients and of the populations that need legal help. And that digital transformation is critical to the survival and existence of all these legal firms. And, you know, that's really, we're trying to get people on that path. And so I think that like just understanding that, you know, meaningful incremental progress is kind of the way to get there. There's nobody's trying to come in and sell you this like overnight push a button and we can automate everything that you spent 20 years of your life trying to become an expert in. I don't think that's the pitch that anybody's actually making. So that's one of the misconceptions. And I think the other misconception is that like it does take some work, you know, it takes some effort, like, and it should, because like the stuff that we learn in law school, the stuff we learn over years of working with clients and all the nuances of courts that you only learn by filing into them and getting rejected, and oh, this judge likes this, you know, all of that really detailed information is something that, you know, you can bring into the document automation system. And that takes some effort. And it's like, even if it takes a few hours, if you think about everything you've gone through to gather that information, you know, we should expect there to be some amount of effort to transfer that knowledge into some kind of, you know, system. So I think it's got to be a little bit more of a practical, hey, we want to really devote some time to getting this right. We want to be thoughtful about the documents we're going to start to automate and the workflows that are most helpful to our customers and clients, and think about it more like that than, you know, some sort of silver bullet magic solution is going to transform your world overnight. So that's not me putting on my sales hat, I guess, but that's kind of the reality of it, I think.
Well, absolutely. I mean, what is taking the time to invest in a system that will help you avoid errors, you know, because if it pulls information straight from your case management system, then it's not a Word document that you have used for multiple clients that you could accidentally forget to change one field, you know,
Yeah.
and then you submit it and it's now part of the permanent record. I mean, yes, absolutely, it's going to take some work to get there, but the time savings in the long term, and I think that's, I know personally, I've seen people leery of taking the time up front to save
Yeah.
time and effort in the long term.
Yeah.
You know, it just always boggles my mind that, you know, take an hour now to save 10 hours later, you know. It's not that, you know, creating a document is going to take an hour, but it's just that principle is that, you know, you have to put some work in to see the benefits later.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can do it over time, you know, but we see people that, you know, can now generate their documents. We've seen legal aid organizations, you know, that by adopting that mentality do end up transforming how they provide services. And they can provide, temporary restraining orders in a number of minutes now. To, you know, they can generate those very quickly, and they can help people with uncontested divorces and, eviction notices where you have these really tight turnaround timelines that, can become really problematic for people if they don't, respond in 7 days or whatever. So yeah, once you kind of embrace that mentality, the output, the impact that can be achieved with the solutions that exist now are massive. So like, absolutely, they really can be transformative. But if you kind of jump to that end step without thinking about the work that you've got to put into it, I think it becomes unrealistic. But if you're willing to put in a little bit of work, then I think that the impact can be truly transformative. And we've seen that with dozens and dozens of legal aid organizations and law firms, across the country and now in different countries as well. So yeah, absolutely. That's part of the change management piece too, I think, is that culture of we've got to invest in this. This is something that, nobody's trying to promise it's a magic solution. We all need to come together. Let's get our templates cleaned up. Let's figure out the language we want to agree on. Let's have a weekly meeting to, agree on this language, and then we put a stamp on it, and then we automate it, whatever you want to do. And we've got a lot of services. I mean, one thing that Clio Draft has is we have a professional services arm now, where we've got a bunch of attorneys and paralegals that can build those documents for you. So if people don't want to do it, there are other solutions, but yeah, it's like a lot of things. You kind of get out of it what you're willing to put into it.
So I understand that you also, users of Clio Draft also have access to libraries of official court forms. And I really love that because when I was in law school, I was a law clerk at a firm, and you had to, here in Virginia, you had to go to the courthouse and get, a printout of this form. And summer in Virginia is not the best time to be walking around outside. So I turned this into a PDF and then made it a fillable PDF. And I mean, just because I didn't want to walk out in the heat.
Right.
And why no one had ever done it before, I don't know. But anyway, the an attorney used it, and the first time that she took it to court, the judge actually stopped the court and asked the attorney, "Where did you get this?" Because it looks so nice. It wasn't,
Yeah.
it wasn't handwritten. And all the type fit in the spaces. I mean, so it just was so funny to me that of my summer, that was the thing that got noticed. But getting those forms, and so that's really interesting. So how actually does that service work?
Yeah, so if you sign up for Clio Draft, you basically can choose which states. We have all 50 states, and we have the top 3 counties for each state. And in some cases, we'll have additional forms. And those are going to be, court created documents. And so, in California, in Michigan, in Ohio, every state has a bunch of approved forms that are helpful for the court system because, they're getting just a massive amount of documents coming through the door. So the more standardization that those documents can have, the easier it is for the courts to process, the more efficient the court can be, the better the system, everything kind of runs a little bit better with that standardization. So we're seeing, increasingly courts look to standardizing documents as a way to help them manage the volume. And so what we do is we collect all those forms. We've got about 50,000 forms or so, and we make them pre-fillable and pre-automated. And so if you've got 8 or 10 probate forms that you need to fill out, you can enter the client's name in one place, essentially kind of like on a web form, and that's going to go into all the places across all the documents that you need that client name. If they come back and you spelled it wrong, they gave you the wrong spelling, you wrote it down wrong over the phone, you can adjust it in one place and it'll update across all those documents. If you want to pre-check boxes and you can save different sets for this is a divorce with kids, this is a divorce without kids, here's a package with a fee waiver, here's a package without a fee waiver, here's a package for people that have certain benefits that might change the other documents. So you can kind of customize them and save them. And then in some documents there's calculations, you can have the canned language. And so you can choose your court form bundle, and you basically can buy California court forms or USCIS court forms or New Jersey court forms. And that's going to be that entire sort of library of approved court forms for that state. And then there'll be a couple of the counties with county level court forms. And then we keep those up to date. And so then we monitor them, we update them when they get updated. We have a whole team and process and system that does that. And so, that was kind of the initial place that we started with Lawyaw, was with PDF court forms. And the first example was using them for expungements. That was kind of the first foray into our court form automation.
Awesome. And expungements is a really good, I don't know, it's the place that many law students get their first experience with clients, because you can go and do a pro bono event as a law student with, obviously supervision, but it's a great place to see, that your work is going to matter,
Yeah.
because that really does affect people's lives. So
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah. Oh, I was just gonna say, our first public use of Lawyaw was a legal aid clinic in San Francisco that was put on by Californians for Safety and Justice and a bunch of other legal aid organizations in California came together, and we had this expungement clinic. And so, we were very nervous because it was new technology and everything. And we were set up with our laptops, and we were kind of sitting with people and trying to help. And what just really was unexpected was just how emotional that experience was. People were coming dressed up in suits. People were much older than I expected them to be. They were bringing their grandkids. They were taking something that's been following them around for their whole life, and they were doing something proactive to turn the page. And it felt like they were lifting this huge weight off their chest. People were crying. And it was such a really special experience to realize exactly what you're saying. Like, this thing that we're doing, this tool that we're building, really, really helps people, and it has an impact, and it's meaningful. And that became kind of the foundation of Lawyaw. We from that moment on, we were like, we're onto something, because it's working. We were able to clear 60 records in like 4 hours or something, or fill out that many forms. And the people that we were helping were so appreciative. And I think just the rest of our team and myself, we just had no idea of how that would land with the people that needed the expungements being done. And so, yeah, I think it's really, really special and critical to keep that human aspect of the technology, how it works in people's lives, and the work that we're doing, especially on some of those things that can feel repetitive when you're doing them, in the basement by yourself. But when you're actually thinking about the impact they have, it's so meaningful to people. So that's been a really one of my favorite parts of this whole journey is the opportunity to have been able to work with legal aids who are using the technology to really help people in a meaningful way.
That's awesome. And I would strongly recommend any law students listening that if you have the opportunity to participate in any kind of expungement clinic or a name and gender marker change clinic, it will change your view of the world, and how you can have an impact. And it's something that you can do even if you go into, business law or something like that. Doing those pro bono clinics with your local legal aid organization can be your way to be back in touch with the people. It's anyway. So that's an aside, but it was really powerful for me, and I understand for you, Tucker, it was also a moving point. I mean, that's great when you have that connection, and you see how what you're doing makes that impact. It's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So we're going to turn a little bit to Clio and Clio entering the legal aid market. So are you able to speak to how Clio is adapting to meeting the needs of legal aid organizations, or is that another conversation we need to have?
No, well, I mean, I can speak to it a little bit. There's a really talented team at Clio that is working on this. Tamison Reno and Robbie Simpson and Annie Phelan are all phenomenally talented people who are dedicating to this initiative. So it's really they're probably the best people to speak to it. But I work with them as well, and I can speak to some of the some of the features and some of what we've experienced in entering the space. But I think it does come from Clio's mission is to transform the legal experience for all, and we're very aware of our customers primarily being private attorneys who are being paid money by clients, and that's what the software was built for initially. I think that Jack has been very aware, and one of the reasons we joined Clio, frankly, was he's super tuned into this gap, this access to justice gap, and the ability of technology to close it, and the benefits that closing that gap provides for everybody, right? For like we've talked about, and so they've really kind of made a very strong commitment to using the capabilities of technology and to sort of trying to learn how we can enable legal aid organizations to have all the advantages that are available, and so it's been really exciting, and I think that the team's worked really hard to learn from the community and to understand, there's certain things that are in Clio software that are just not relevant to legal aid, especially if they're purely grant funded. And so you can hide the billing and invoicing features, and you can kind of get that off of your screen. That's not relevant to them. And if you need to, they have a really cool eligibility calculator, and you can enter in the information and you can get that analysis, or you can send out a link to somebody and have them enter in the information, and they're not going to have the exact same view as you. It's going to be thoughtful, and so there's some really cool, I think, really specific things that are really helpful for legal aid. And I think learning those things and getting into the conversation has been really rewarding for everybody. The legal aid community, I think, especially if you're trying to do something helpful and you're like, hey, help me help you kind of thing. It's just such a welcoming community, so helpful, very vocal, very specific. They're just lovely, I think across the board, when I talk to that team, one of the things that comes up is like, they just love working with the legal aids, and they feel like so lucky to have built these relationships. And I think it's been a really, really rewarding experience for everybody. And I think the product's coming out really, really nicely and really kind of tailored to the unique needs of a lot of legal aid organizations. So there's definitely, we're on the path. So, I'm sure that there's more exciting things I can't talk about that, we're working on. But what we've built so far is honestly, it's very impressive, and we've gotten really great feedback on it. And I know that there's discounts for legal aid and nonprofit organizations that are pretty significant. So that Clio's really approaching it as something that they feel a commitment to empowering people with, they're kind of doing the good work with really, really good tools. So that's kind of the place that we're coming from. I don't know if that you have more specific questions, but that's part of.
Well, that gives a start. And one of the things that impressed me as a law student was I attended the Clio Cloud Conference on scholarship. And then as an AT-Day Tech Fellow, I also attended. And then, throughout the pandemic, we've been able to attend virtually at very little cost, which has been awesome. So even without, I use Clio in law school, but now currently I do not. But just to go, there's nothing like this conference in the legal aid sector. And perhaps in the larger, legal sector as well. The commitment to social justice and the commitment to making the world a better place, I don't know, it just bleeds during the conference. You can just feel it in the air, and you can see it in the speakers chosen. So why would you recommend people attend the cloud conference, even if they're not using, or would you?
Yeah, I absolutely would, and I agree with you. It's a really phenomenal conference. It's really well done, very thoughtful. I mean, I work at Clio, but I'm also very impressed. And as somebody coming into Clio, I was very impressed by the entire conference and the speakers and the messaging. And I think it's helpful for a bunch of reasons. But one is that you get to understand how people are using technology and what's available. You know, what is the current state and what's coming. You know, there's always, you know, hey, here are things that are being worked on. Here are cool examples of sort of what's around the corner. And I think Clio's really on the cutting edge and on the pulse of what's possible with technology and legal services. And so I think from one angle, it's helpful for everybody to just know sort of what is available, where things are heading, even if it's you know, in a slightly different context in some situations. You know, I think that's still, you know, again, we're as an industry, we're going through this kind of digital transformation. So I think it's really helpful context for everybody to have, you know, especially with all the AI that's coming out, and knowing, just having that context. And I think the Clio Conference is the #1 place to get that in, you know, 2.5 days. The other big thing that is really rewarding and that I really look forward to is you meet so many interesting people, and you develop a lot of connections with people from all over the world now, who are working on cool things, who are forward looking, who are trying to, you know, drive progress. And so those relationships become really fun. You start seeing people, you know, that now I go there and I see people that I've seen for years at Clio conferences, and I saw them when we were a vendor, and I saw them as, you know, and now I see them, you know, as a Clio employee. And you know, and it really extends for, you know, state bar organizations, different types of leadership councils. Like, there's a lot of diverse and interesting people that come. So I think that the relationship building and just getting to meet people is a huge advantage, and really valuable. And then, you know, I think people never really fully appreciate how big of a part of the building process, you know, our customers and the community is. Like, we literally are trying to build the things that people want. That's yeah. I used to joke all the time at Lawyaw, like, our goal is to build stuff people want. That's it, you know. So, you know, we're not like a dev shop, but we want to spend as much time and listen to people, and like, we are successful if we build the thing that you will want. And so the impact that you can have on, you know, product roadmaps, on features that are being built, on new capabilities, you know, is real. I've met with many people at ClioCon that have printouts of like, hey, here's a bunch of stuff that we want, and, you know, here's things that would be great if you could help us with. And I've taken those meetings, you know, with Jack and Jonathan Watson, like the CTO, CEO, like they listen, you know. And so I think that's the third kind of really exciting piece, is that you really, it's still small enough that you can really impact the conversation and what's being worked on. And I think that's really fun to then kind of the next year say, hey, remember this thing you mentioned? You know, we've got, this is our version of it. So I think it's incredibly valuable. And I think increasingly, you know, Clio's really, really trying and making it an effort, and I think having a lot of success at bringing in legal aid into the conversation, you know. And in a lot of ways, that's what we want to do. We want to help the most people get the most high quality legal help. And a lot of really smart, talented people have been dedicating their lives to this in the legal aid space. And there's a lot for everybody to learn from the work that you all have been doing, you know. So selfishly, I want you guys there too, because we learn so much from people who've been approaching the problem with that. How do I help the most amount of people with the best quality legal work? And not having the revenue component is kind of refreshing in a lot of ways.
I think definitely hear those refrains in the speakers. And, you know, I always I mean, it's always the top notch speakers, top notch entertainment, top notch everything. And they do make it available through the scholarship program and things. So definitely people should check it out and see if they qualify for the scholarship program. I don't know if they call it scholarship anymore, but there is a registration assistance program, I guess we could call it.
Oh yeah,
So,
if you're interested, reach out, and I'm sure that somebody can help you. If somebody wants to go and can't afford it, I'm sure that and is working in legal aid, I'm sure that we can work with you.
so we're coming to the end. What is one question that you wish that you would be asked in interviews that no one ever asks?
That is a good question. I think I wish that we talked a little bit more general, like in a general sense. I wish that I was asked more about opportunities that are maybe getting less attention that could be really impactful on closing the access gap. I think that we tend to sort of follow the tracks, document automation is one, mobile is one. But I think we have an opportunity right now to rethink some of the big fundamental pieces of machinery that are kind of of how the legal system operates right now. And I think that there's opportunities to really to rethink some of those fundamentals. And one of the things that I am very interested in is, in a world where people get more access to the benefits and protections of the law, where are there other people in the system that benefit from that other than the individual person? So in the expungement context, and we've done a ton of work in the expungement work, and I'm still very involved in a lot of ongoing projects there. A very concrete example is if somebody has a criminal record, they might not be able to access subsidized housing. Okay, what happens if they get access? What happens if they do get to the ability to access that subsidized housing? What happens? It's great for that person. Now they have access to subsidized housing. But there's all of these other people in the system that actually benefit from that person having access. And some of those people in the system benefit in an economic way. They make money by people having better access to legal help. And I think that's an extremely important dimension to this problem that we don't talk about enough. And I don't know that the housing developers are going to be the ones that fund legal aid, but they might be, and there might be other examples of that are really powerful. And so I think that if we can look at the overall economic impact of increasing access to legal aid and kind of have that be part of the narrative that we're sharing out, I think that would be a really, really positive thing and could really uncover some dramatically different ways of really funding access to legal help that I think would be really powerful. And I think that you when we're looking at kind of the potential of AI technologies and the massive impact that technology can have, I think it sort of, I feel like an obligation to have some of the bigger conversations about sort of the economics of legal help. And I think that's a really, really, really exciting space. Medical legal partnerships being an example of that, and kind of holistically understanding like what access has, giving that access to somebody, increasing their transportation and employability and housing and access to healthcare. That provides a huge amount of benefits to the whole system. And so I think having this holistic view of the value of that would be really, really helpful for legal aid organizations. And I would love to talk more about that.
Well, that sounds like a really great conversation to have. I think that makes a lot of sense to look beyond our silo. We do tend to silo ourselves in whether legal tech, legal aid, legal tech, but
Sure.
now different spaces. Why aren't we partnering with other organizations and other type? And I think we're starting to see that. Alaska's a great example with the medico-legal partnership that they've developed.
Yeah.
So yes, I certainly agree that is something that we need to look more into. So unfortunately, we can't keep going today.
Yeah,
So
we'll do it next time. But no, this has been
one
great.
one last question. What is your favorite app right now and why? Or what tech tip do you have for our listeners?
Well, I'm gonna take the easy route there and say my favorite app is Clio Draft right now, because I think we're making a ton of exciting progress, and I just love seeing all the unique ways that people are using it. And as part of Clio, we have so many different types of law firms and legal aid organizations using it that I'm always just excited to learn new and inventive ways and applications. So I've been playing a lot with Clio Draft lately, and then I also have a Chat GPT-4 app. I'll give you that one too. It's a voice. It's set up so it responds with a audible, audio response. So I can have like a conversation back and forth and about any random topic without frustrating my other family members, and and so that's been fun too. So those are the two things that I use and that I recommend.
Well, cool. So is that available in the marketplace?
Yeah, I probably should have. You did warn me about this, and I should have prepared for it more. I just don't know enough about it whether to totally recommend it. But it's an official Chat GPT app that allows you to use your voice to ask the questions, and it responds to you. So I'll just leave it there. People can look it up and try to find out which one it is. But on the off chance that I downloaded like a not great one to recommend, I'll let people search it.
I misunderstood. I thought it was a personal one that you had developed yourself, but
Oh, no.
go
It's
to the
not. It's just
marketplace
one I
and look.
it's just one I downloaded and have been using. But it's from the OpenAI team. So
Great. Well, thank you so much, Tucker. This has been really interesting. We delved into a lot of different areas, learned a lot about Clio Draft and the history of the company. So I really appreciate that. And it's great to see a small company that is able to succeed in this market, because it is a tough market to get started. So it's always great to have a success story, see the down the road version. So thank you for being here, and I hope you have a great day. And thank you, audience, for joining us today. And we'll see you next time.
all right. Thank you for having me.